Okay, so we all know that when you're emetophobic, that the fall and winter seasons can be a big stressor and something that you don't exactly look forward to, especially when the kids go back to school and they're coming home and they're bringing a lot of illnesses back and some of the residual stress of COVID-19, things like that. So, what would be your advice as to how to look forward to it? What do you do now as opposed to when you were struggling with emetophobia? What do you look forward to now, and how is your life different?
Well, when it comes to like the winter season, the fall season, or like stomach bug season, probably, it is very different for me because I know I used to kind of, I know if dread is a word for it, but I didn't look forward for winter for that exact reason. But now actually I don't really give it a second thought. Like as a social worker, because I work as a social worker 3 days a week, I'm out and about all day. I go to public toilets all day. I'm out and about in the middle of winter all the time. I see people all the time. I literally saw two people yesterday that both had a stomach bug last week.
Wow.
And instead of panicking and freaking out and being scared all day and being hyper vigilant about, oh, do I feel sick? Do I feel nauseous? Whatever. I haven't really thought about it ever since, and I just continue on with my day. And I mean, I'm fine. If I do end up sick, I will cope and I will get through it and live to see another day. So that's how I cope with it right now. That's kind of the reality of being in an exometaphobe. I mean, you don't really worry about it anymore. And if you do worry about it, if you do have the occasional thought about it, you deal with that thought and you just move on.
Push it aside. Yep. Yeah, I noticed
Yeah,
that about myself as well. I would sometimes be exposed to something and I didn't even, like the next day, I noticed, hey, I'm eating. And I
yeah,
didn't even think about it. It didn't even come up in my head. And I was like, well, I might get sick, but I never have. So,
yeah.
yeah.
I mean, it's kind of like the exact same thing when it comes to like food. Like I used to like if I went out to a restaurant or whatever or eat something that I've never tried before, like I would worry the next day about, if I get sick, what if it happens? What if I get food poisoning? And now I just eat something new or something, I don't know, something I find challenging or whatever. And then I just move on with my day.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and things
Yeah.
do happen sometimes. I remember a year or two ago during the fall, I had a pina colada made for me at a hotel, and the person must have been sick, and I did get sick afterwards. But, the point is, you don't want to restrict your life. You don't want to miss out on the drink
Yeah.
or the trip or the experience because it's fine. You cope with it. And like you said, it's temporary. This will pass. It doesn't even affect you in
Yeah.
the next couple of days. So why are you missing out on your entire life for something that might happen every once in a blue moon?
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly something that I talk about with my clients quite a lot as well. I mean, you don't have to like being sick. It doesn't have to be a walk in the park for you. Like you can still dislike being
Yeah.
sick, and like we all do, right? We all dislike being sick, but you can still. It wouldn't even be that big of an issue if you still had some anxiety about being sick.
Mhm.
If you're sick once, let's say you're sick once every 10 years, and you create a bit of anxiety where you're throwing up or you're unwell, who cares?
Yeah.
Like you're fine the next day, you move on with your life. I mean, it's not an issue.
Yeah. It's really cool and interesting when you can view it like something else, like a flu or a headache or another inconvenience. It's
Yeah,
just that's all it is. So it's
yeah,
it's
exactly.
how do you bridge the gap between feeling like this thing's going to kill me, it's worse than death, to, you know, is it that 10% perfectionism?
Mm.
What would you say?
Well, that's a difficult question because if you're starting from like a full blown emetophobe who's terrified of being sick all day every day to coming to the realization that throwing up is a bit uncomfortable, but it's not that bad. I mean, in a way it is a big change, but it doesn't take a lot to push you get to that point. The only thing you need to realize for yourself is that you will go. I think that's something I always talk about. You mean you have to learn how to cope with being uncomfortable and pushing yourself and realizing that in those moments, yes, you feel uncomfortable and yes, you might feel really bad or shitty in the moment, but it will pass. Like you're not gonna die.
Right. Yeah.
The sun will come up tomorrow. Like you'll be fine. And when you come to the realization that even if you realize, yes, throwing up is an uncomfortable feeling, and it might be unpleasant for like 15 minutes or whatever, but I will cope and I'll be fine, no matter how bad it feels. That's what coping is.
Yeah.
And when you get to the point where, yes, it might be an awful experience, awful for lack of a better word, right? It might be an awful experience, but I can cope. That's it. Then you're at that point already.
Right. Right. And a lot of emetophobes will say, yeah, but the last time was so violent or terrible. And it's like, that's often what it is for all of us. It can be pretty rough,
Yeah, it can be.
realistically.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And that's
Yeah, I
okay.
mean, yeah, but at the same time, I mean, it's still about the perspective that you have on that because they probably thought about the time that they were sick in a very catastrophic, dramatic, overly, in a massive, in a dramatic way. Like, and think about it, something that other people just wouldn't do.
Hmm.
They probably thought about it 10,000 times afterwards, whereas a non-emetophobe probably just got on with their day. Like, yeah, it was kind of uncomfortable. I felt pretty shit, but I just moved on with my life. That's what like a normal person will do. And then
Right.
you have emetophobes to think for another 10,000 times. So you make it bigger and bigger for yourself every single time.
Yeah. It's really all about how you process it. And a lot of times I think that since this happened, a lot of people have created it in their youth or when they didn't have the skills or the tool sets to understand how to think in a powerful, helpful way with high self-esteem when you're a child, especially if you've already been copying those
Yeah,
beliefs and behaviors and attitudes and habits off of somebody around you, you've already been set up to create a phobia, whether it's a emetophobia or something else. If you, even at a very young age like me, were around somebody like that, it's not about the traumatic event. It's about the fact that you are already set up with your thinking styles to create
yeah,
something like that.
yeah, for sure. Yeah. And that's some unless you tackle those beliefs and thinking styles and attitudes that you copied from the people that you grew up around, it will be very difficult or pretty much impossible to overcome your metaphobia fully.
Yes, yes. And
Yeah,
unfortunately, it's utilizing all 26 of them in unhelpful ways. So it is a lot
yeah,
to tackle, but it is possible and it is
for sure.
100% predictable. So you can uncreate it the same way that you created it when you didn't really understand what you were doing or how you did it. But now you can. Now you have the self agency and the responsibility to be able to do that. And it is 100% possible.
Yeah, for sure. So how did you in the past look at the winter and the fall season? How do you experience that time of year right now?
I had the dread. Like you said, I don't know if you've seen the movie A Bug's Life, but there's this scene where they say, when the last leaf falls, and that's when things go bad for them. And I would always think like whenever our leaves would fall, I would get that sense of this anxiety and dread. And whenever the last leaf would fall, I'm like, all right, here it comes, buckle up. It's gonna get bad.
Yeah,
I actually didn't get sick a lot as a child. But when I recreated emetophobia a lot in college when I was sick again, that's when it really just went into hyperdrive and I started being absolutely terrified. Whereas I used to look forward to the fall. I loved the smells of the bonfire and the crispy fresh leaves, especially up in New Jersey where I used to live. You could go hiking and it was like every color. It was so beautiful up in the mountains and the hot cocoa and the pumpkin ice coffees and all these wonderful
yeah,
things. And it was, effectively I viewed it as being stolen from me because I would say the only time of year that I can truly feel free and happy is the summer. And so I am so happy to have that back again because
Yeah.
I don't miss that feeling, and I don't think about it that way at all anymore. Um, I'm not a big fan of traveling in the winter just because it's a lot of just stress in general. I'm more of a homebody, but I don't fear it. I'm not living in dread.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah. It is a very freeing experience because, you're literally like folks to create so much anxiety throughout, the fall winter period for something that, I have had a stomach bug like twice in my life, maybe. That's it. I've been sick for 9 years and I go about, all the time during the winter time. It never happened to me in
right.
9 years. So you're waiting every single day like something really bad is about to happen
Yes.
every single day of your life. And when it finally happens, like, from the research, right, that most emetophobes say that the last time they were sick, or a lot of them said, actually it wasn't that bad.
Right.
And yet all of them create so much anxiety and dread about something that wasn't even that bad in the first place. And even if it was that bad, then everybody on the planet would think that way.
Yes, exactly. That's how we know that it just has to do with your perspective. That's funny you said that because the last time I was sick in 2007, uh, it was pretty bad, but I had processed it pretty well. I remember that night. And the funny thing was, I had a friend in college who also had emetophobia, and she was like, she came up to me afterwards, after I had processed it, and she was like, "How was it? Was it terrible?" And she was like building it up and everything. And I guess I just kind of took to what she said, and I was like, maybe it was really scary. Maybe it is, you know? And after that is when I really made it really big again. So that
Yeah.
shows you right there that it is so much about how you are thinking about that event. Did you process it in a powerful way? And then we would also say it's so important if you do have any kind of exposure at all, whether or not your child was sick and maybe you didn't get sick, but it's so important to process that in a powerful way and say, "Hey, I got through this. I didn't get sick. I handled it well. I didn't leave the house or run away or scream or freak out. I didn't bleach my hands until they were raw." Um, and every time that you do that, you're going to create more of a sense of power and control over your experiences and in your life. So I
Yeah.
would definitely say to any emetophobes watching this season, to make sure that you're doing that.
Yeah. And for sure. Yeah, and exactly. And then also what you're getting for yourself is perspective. Because I'm sure that if a emetophobes took a real hard look at the stuff they've been through in their lives, whether it's them being ill or people around them being ill, and I don't mean ill and like throwing up, but like just bad. I mean, bad stuff happens to everybody. Like people die, people get sick, you lose your job, you get divorced. I don't know, you get bullied at school. All of the horrible stuff that just happens to a lot of people. You cope with that stuff as well. Like you didn't die the day that your cat died, or you didn't die the day that your husband left you, and
Hmm.
you cope with that, but yet you still create so much anxiety about being sick every single day. It's also putting, I think, a really important part of mental health and important part of the Thrive program is getting perspective for yourself
Hmm.
and
Yes.
realizing that, how bad is this really? Yeah, I'm creating all this emotional anxiety about being sick. Is it really that bad?
Yeah.
Is it really something I should be, so anxious for? Maybe I can create some anxiety, but maybe it's not really what you call that. Maybe it's a bit much to create so much anxiety every single day about something that people do every single day. Like some people are sick all the time for whatever reason, and they just cope with it really well. So
Yeah.
getting perspective on that stuff is really, really important.
Yeah, that's a great point. I remember when I was in the thick of it and it was really bad, I knew that. I knew that there was a difference between how I was thinking about it and other people, but I didn't know how to get there, if that makes
Mm-hmm.
sense. So I would say, hey, I can handle anything. I can jump out of a plane. I can swim with sharks. I can do this, this, this. I've been sick. I've had shingles. Why is it that this one thing gets me? And I think the key point, and I also had figured this out before I went through the program, but I didn't know what to do with it, is it's all about control. And vomiting is the one thing that you just have zero control over. It's a sudden onset sometimes for people. I mean, it fits the recipe for somebody who has all those thinking styles to definitely create a fear of that kind of illness as opposed to something else like that is actually more destructive, like a divorce. You think, why is this thing different than that? Why is this thing, why am I able to cope with something like that and not this? Well, I think it really comes down to that high desire for control.
Yeah. I decide for control, low coping skills, right? Because you only try to control so much because you believe that you can cope.
Yep.
If you cannot cope, then the only thing you can do is avoid everything.
Yes, that's right. We only create stress and anxiety if we think that we cannot handle or cope with that thing, that we won't be able to.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
So the answer is to strengthen those secondary coping skill, secondary control skills. Yes. And
Yeah,
that's what you learn in the program. So
yeah, yeah. And I mean, it's not that's something that is often. I mean, it's not an easy thing. Let's face it, right? Building up coping skills, and that's not something that only goes for metaphors, but for anybody, you have to go out of your comfort zone and learn to tolerate with being a bit uncomfortable. And that's especially in the beginning, that's not fun. I mean, you don't have to push yourself immensely far to the point where you're really uncomfortable, but like you still have to push yourself a little bit out there
hmm
to in order for you to create some anxiety and learn to cope with that, and learn to manage your emotions, manage your thoughts, and it's not always easy, but it's the most important thing you probably have to do.
Yes. Yeah. I call them like, at least for myself, I call them like mini or micro exposures. It's not that you have to expose yourself to vomiting right away or something like that, but you build up a skill set through changing and challenging your thinking around a certain subject and you expose yourself. And it's not just the area of being sick. You want to expose yourself to a lot of different uncomfortable, unpleasant things to show yourself
Yeah,
that you're able to, that you can, that you don't need to have fear, that you don't need to panic over things in your life that you can't control. Like think about what we do all the time by riding in the passenger seat of a car with somebody else driving. Think about the amount of
yeah,
secondary control skills you have to exhibit to let somebody else eh, they're they could make one small error and you could be dead. So
yeah,
why do we not translate that to other parts of our life as well?
yeah. And actually, in order to become thriving, you have to do that.
Mhm.
Because the Thrive program is not just about overcoming metaphobia, and that's the end of it. I mean, it's about thriving. That's the
R-
end goal, and
Right.
that means that you have no high self-esteem and low social anxiety, and that you feel powerful in all areas of your life, not just about coping with being sick.
Yes. I want to just mention I was talking to that same friend that I mentioned earlier. She has done a different kind of intervention and she said, "Oh, I'm not afraid of throwing up anymore." But this same person is still feeling very powerless in different parts of her life. So even though she went back
Yeah,
through that experience and she reprocessed it a little bit differently and she feels more powerfully in that area, you can see that her skill set did not increase in the other areas of her life, like overspending, issues around
yeah,
eating, issues around narcotic use. She said to me very openly, I am, in other words, I'm scared to face anything unpleasant in my life. And that's why I'm going to all these other external um, coping mechanisms. And so I
yeah,
explained how that's why it's so important to learn to thrive because even if you just kind of band-aid or fix one little area of your life, it doesn't translate to all the other areas of your life without working on the three things that you just mentioned, the sense
yeah,
of power and control over your experience, your social anxiety and social confidence, and high stable self-esteem. You need all of those things to be powerful in
yeah.
every single domain of your life.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's something that I mean, I overcame anxiety, depression, and emetophobia with the Thrive program, but it's 3 years down the line now, and that's something that I I reap the benefits of that every single day, but I especially reap the benefits of the fact that I know that I can cope with anything that happens in life. I know how to build coping skills. I know how to manage my thoughts, my emotions. I know how to keep perspective and be positive every single day, and be kind to myself. And that's the kind of stuff that really makes life a lot easier and just a lot more enjoyable every single
Yes.
day in
Yes.
the long run.
Yeah. I think that when people are starting to think about overcoming emetophobia, they don't even have the capacity at the time to think about what you just said. But those things are
Yeah,
such amazing benefits to completing the
yeah,
program
sure,
and the skill set that you're going to learn. So it's okay if you can't even think about it right now and you're just so hyper focused on getting
sure,
this
yeah,
thing out of your life. But just know that those things are what's going to happen to you inevitably. I mean,
yeah, yeah.
like
And you can
Rob's,
start to enjoy winter time and the fall time without creating anxiety every single day.
yes. Yes, and that's important because it's a lot of the year. You don't wanna think to
Yeah,
yourself, "Half of the year, I'm miserable or scared," or,
yeah,
you know, um, I remember when, uh, I was exposed to a lot of sickness in the summer, a couple years ago. I just thought, "Oh, no, now I have nothing left anymore," and you don't wanna have to think like that. You don't wanna think like
yeah,
your life depends on something external like that because you're always gonna feel like it's unpredictable and scary. You just wanna wake up every day and feel like you just said. You don't wanna feel like your happiness is dependent upon something, whether it's, the weather or what's going on with politics or is there stomach
yeah,
bugs going around. You just want to live your life to the best of your ability every single day, no matter what, because life is
yeah,
hard enough
exactly.
as it is already, so we need to have that skill set.
Yeah. And that's something that again you can easily learn, but you never been shown how to do it. Like most people, I mean, let's face it. I mean, most people never get um, learn how to manage your thinking, how to manage your thoughts, how to manage your beliefs.
Mhm.
That's not something that you learn, but it's hard work, but it's a very easy thing to learn. Essentially, you just need to put
Yes.
a bit of effort in.
Yes, it really is eye-opening when you're going through the program to understand and to learn how
Yeah,
much you've really copied off of um, external sources like your peers, your teachers, your favorite TV shows, and most importantly, your parents or
yeah,
siblings too. Yeah. If they said something and you find a lot of times also your inner voice is connected to that, you might be hearing parent a lot of the time, and that's something else that you can work on as well.
yeah, for sure. And actually, what was I gonna say? I want to say something about what you said.
Copying beliefs.
Yeah, it was about that.
That's
Yeah, no,
okay.
I was going to say something different. When I explain to people like how much Thrive affects me every single day, I will say to them like it's like Thrive is the software in my brain. Like the hardware is in my brain, right? But the software in my brain, it feels like it's just Thrive. Like on a day-to-day basis, when everything's like calm, relaxed in my life, it's easy. But I just manage my thinking, my emotions. It feels automatically because it's so ingrained into my brain. Like it's so easy for me. But obviously, when stuff happens in my life that isn't so relaxing or shit just hits the fan, right? Then I do have to put effort in to remain, calm and relaxed and cope with situations. But again, it's easy for me because I have those skill set. I
Yeah.
have that skill set to do that every single day, and that's why Thrive is so amazing because you know you have a skill set for life to make the best of your life every single day, no matter what happens. And
Right.
that's an amazing thing to do every single day.
It is, and it is a doing thing, like you just said. It's not like you just
Yeah,
finish the program and that's it. It's you then have the ability to apply those resources and you have the
yeah,
motivation and the effort and the belief to do so for the rest of your life. It is like learning to ride a bike, but you still need to put the effort into pushing the pedals.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.